In a major blow to Donald Trump, the Department of Justice has now requested a January 2nd, 2024 trial date, likely the earliest possible trial date we could have expected from Jack Smith. It would also mean that any conviction or acquittal would happen, according to the DOJ's estimates, no longer than 4 to 6 weeks after that, putting us around mid-February, meaning that if and when voters head to the polls in the 2024 race, assuming Donald Trump is the Republican nominee for president, voters will know whether they'll be casting their ballots for a convicted felon in the greatest crime against this country in its history. Seems like something voters should know before they make their voices heard at the polls. If the DOJ's request is granted, that would make this trial the first criminal trial that Trump contends with, considering the Manhattan DA hush money case is slated for March of 2024, and the classified documents case in Florida is slated for May of 2024. And of course, we still don't know about the trial date for any potential Fulton County case yet. The government's timeline would include a December 11, 2023 jury selection date, and then the trial immediately following the new year. In terms of pretrial motions, the DOJ writes that it is, quote, prepared at this moment to produce to the defendant the majority of discovery in this case, including materials that exceed its obligations. And of course, the date at which this would all be presented is at the next hearing on August 28th, meaning that all of the evidence in this case would be submitted within the next 2.5 weeks. Not great if your plan is to delay this as long as humanly possible, which, by the way, is exactly what the Trump team is looking to do. According to Politico, Trump's legal team is expected to file its own proposed trial timeline next week, but has already forecast a starkly different view of the case. Trump's attorney John Lauro has predicted it could take years to review and organize evidence well past the 2024 election in which Trump is favored to be the Republican nominee. Only small problem, while the Trump team is pretending that it's starting from scratch here and will need years to even begin the process of working its way through the evidence, Jack Smith preemptively debunked that claim, writing, defense counsel claims, both in a media interview and in the initial hearing, that the government has been investigating this matter for 3.5 years, while the defense is starting with a blank slate. Not only is this claim impossible, as January 6, 2021 was 2.5 years ago, but it is disingenuous. The defendant has been aware of and has responded forcefully in opposition to certain relevant information made public through its hearings and the report written by the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Furthermore, the defendant and his counsel have long been aware of details of the government's investigation leading to his indictment, having had first contact with government counsel in June 2022. Indeed, at his initial appearance, the defendant was accompanied by an attorney familiar with the certain relevant pre-indictment information. In sum, the defendant has a greater and more detailed understanding of the evidence supporting the charges against him at the outset of this criminal case than most defendants, and is ably advised by multiple attorneys, including some who have represented him in this matter for the last year. All of which is to say, when Trump's legal team pretends that this is all brand new to them, and it sure is going to take some time to familiarize themselves with this case, that is an abject lie and they know it. Of course, this hasn't been the only misstep from the Trump legal team. His attorney, John Lauro, also went on cable news this weekend arguing for the case to be moved to West Virginia, and you're going to love the reason why.
You still going to pursue a change of venue?
Absolutely. We would like a diverse venue, a diverse jury.
Do you have any expectation that will be granted?
That reflects the characteristics of the American people. It's up to the judge. I think West Virginia would be an excellent venue to try this case.
Speaking of the judge,
very close to D.C. and a much more diverse.
That's right. This case should be moved to West Virginia because of its diversity. Because if there's any place in the United States known for diversity, it is that state, with all of its 92% of white people. Laura would also get stuck in another line of questioning that he'd ultimately have quite a bit of trouble answering.
John, before I let you go, do you remember what you were doing the early morning of November 9th, 2016?
I have no idea.
Well, I remember what I was doing. I was covering President-elect Trump announcing that he had won the presidency about 3 a.m. that morning after the November 8th election. My question to you, John, is how did he know he won?
Well, politicians are convinced in the righteousness of their cause, including President Trump. And he certainly believed that he won.
But on what basis did he know he
won?
But on what basis did he know he won?
Can I finish? Can I finish?
Sure.
Can I finish? And he believed in 2020 that he won based on the fact that he had 10 million more votes than in 2016. He had a situation where somehow President Biden, or at that time candidate Biden, received 15 million more votes than Hillary Clinton. And he also understood in 2020 that President Trump understood that he had won virtually all of the bellwether counties and 84% of all the counties in the country.
John, let me help you with this.
That he was successful.
John, let me help you with this. I wasn't asking about 2020.
No, let me help you with this because
I wasn't asking about 2020, John. John, I wasn't asking about 2020. I was asking about 2016.
Right.
Because the votes were still being counted in 2016. The votes were still being counted in 2016. There had been no recounts. How did he know in 2016 that he had won? How did he know? On what basis?
The issue, let me just tell you something. The issue in this criminal case is not what happened in 2016 and whether all candidates say they won. The issue now is in 2020 whether or not the Justice Department can weaponize criminal law to go after a political opponent and prevent that opponent from running for office. That's the issue, not what happened in 2016.
John Lauro, we thank you for your time.
Do you think it's fair what the Biden administration is doing to a candidate for president?
John Lauro, we thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
And in response to that clip, here's the analogy I like to use. In the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl in 2019, but then lost in 2020. If you were to ask them how they knew they won in 2019, they'd have simply said, "We scored more points in the game." Easy. But now imagine they refuse to accept their loss the next year in 2020, and you ask them the same question again. Well, now they would refuse to say that they knew they won in 2019 by points, because by that logic, it would become clear that they lost in 2020. And so now the goalposts are being moved in service of the lie. That's what's going on here. Trump's lawyer is refusing to say that Trump knew he won in 2016 because he was the first person to reach 270 electoral votes, because by that same logic, it would then become clear that Biden won in 2020. And so instead, we're getting this manic dissembling on national television, all in service of Trump's lies. So at this point, given that we've already seen a proposed January trial date by the DOJ, we'll now see a request by the Trump team for a trial date sometime in 2032, and then it'll be up to Judge Chutkan to make her final decision. I spoke with former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner as part of our YouTube-only legal series, The Legal Breakdown, about when we'll have that date announced.
I can almost promise you we're going to have a trial date announced on August 28th. The reason I can promise that is because as I attended the arraignment hearing for Donald Trump, the magistrate judge who was presiding over that hearing, it wasn't Judge Chutkan, it was a magistrate judge, said, "Judge Chutkan has asked me to direct you, prosecution and defense attorneys, to file a motion with a proposed trial date, and then when you meet at the next status hearing in this case, which was set for August 28th, Judge Chutkan will be setting a trial date." So I'm quite sure Judge Chutkan will be setting a trial date on August 28th. With respect to what needs to be litigated, pretty much everything, right? All pretrial motions that the defense can come up with attacking, for example, the theory of liability. They will make all sorts of claims, largely frivolous claims, baseless claims, claims without any legal support that, the grand jury process was abused and the charges as returned have some legal infirmity. They will argue executive privilege. They will argue anything and everything they can think of, in part just trying to bog down the process. But again, with Judge Chutkan presiding, she is a fair, independent, smart, fearless judge. She has proved that in 10 years on the federal bench. She will move through all this like through a goose, and she will stick with the trial date she sets. But don't be surprised if we see lots of motions filed by Trump's legal team. Some of them may have some merit and require some serious litigation to resolve. Many of them will not.
Meaning this issue will be resolved soon, and then we can finally get to the business of holding this criminal accountable for his actions. Trump spent years crowing about leading the law and order party. Now he'll get to show his appreciation for it from inside a courtroom. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.